Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Budd. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go back to Senator Reed's opening statement at the end where he talked about Churchill and the necessity of thinking first. The first step, it seems to me, in this process is to have a better focus on what we need in the future and not what we needed in the past. The prime examples to me are hypersonics and directed energy. The ground-based interceptor program, those missiles up in Alaska that are designed to hit a bullet with a bullet, are $70 million apiece. By the way, I got that number from an AI app on my phone. But the point is, we have been fighting the last war. Instead of talking about directed energy, which costs 50 cents a shot rather than 70 million, the focus has been on missiles and missiles. And by the way, those missiles won't do anything with hypersonics. That's another technology that we were late on. And so this process has to start with acquiring the right things. New technologies win wars. Genghis Khan conquered the world because of the invention of the stirrup. The Battle of Agincourt was won by the longbow. World War I, the tank. World War II, the atomic weapon. So I think this discussion has to start before we get to all the processes that we're going after the right products. Mr. Sankar, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. I love the tank example in particular because it was the Royal Navy that built the tank. It was widely...
They were called tanks because the code name was Tankers for the Eastern Front or something like that.
And I think this shows you, I think even before the tank, there was the land boat, which Churchill, this seems to be a hearing about Churchill in many ways. But the reason I think that's really important is it was a heterodox approach. If you had asked the Army, the British Army, to think of what they were going to need to win World War I, they would have been wrong. In fact, they were wrong.
Would have said more troops and deeper trenches.
And so how do we have to recognize that the innovation to fight and win the next war will come from the edges of our military, the people who are closest to those problems. It's very unlikely to come from this city.
Well, we wouldn't have had a nuclear Navy but for Admiral Rickover.
And as Zumwalt said, the Navy had three enemies, the Soviet Union, the Air Force, and Hyman Rickover. So he was not widely loved. But I think we need more tolerance for the heretics, because these heretics end up being our heroes.
Well, I hope that, and I don't know how you inject creativity into the process. Mr. Gerst, do you have any thoughts on that?
I also think, sir, that we need to invest in the capacity to act quickly. So back to Mr. Diller's comment, even if we plan much better, if we don't have the industrial network that can react quickly, then if we have to wait to create that, to decide the perfect thing we want. And so I'm also a fan of the plan for the unplanned, create the capacity, rebuild. We've lost the middle of our industrial base. We've got very big performers, a lot of little small performers. And that's where I think the commercial marketplace venture, scaling into that middle becomes really important.
Speaking of acting quickly, this is a chart that derived from our dear departed Chairman Jim Inhofe. It compares the time it takes from concept to a new product. Starting back in 1945, the dark line is a military aircraft. The light blue line is a commercial aircraft, and the red line is an automobile. So back around in the 60s and 70s, those three things took about the same time to get to prototype and actually going. But something happened, and now a military aircraft is like 25 or 30 years from concept to development. Commercial aircraft, much, much faster, and an automobile has gone down. So I believe that a lot of this is because of the bureaucratic things that we've been talking about today, the impediments to actually getting some of these products to market. The other thing that bothers me is the proclivity of the Pentagon to have its own product. It can't buy something off the shelf. Senator Tillis used to bring the spec for the handgun, which was, I don't know how many thousand pages, instead of going to a commercially available handgun. All of that we require. Requirements creep is another problem, the definition of requirements, and then requirements keep stacking up. Mr. Diller, you have any thoughts on those ideas?
Sure. The Air Force has emptied the museums and the boneyards for C-130 hubcaps. This took us days to build. It will take months to get it certified. It finally was to fly. It took months to certify. Nothing changed. The data was available on day one. The hardware was available on day one. It did not change. We have to change the pace of adoption. We must digitize our industrial base. We must digitize our bureaucracy.
With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, one of the problems is the risk averse, which has been discussed. As I've observed the development of hypersonics, for example, the Chinese seem willing to fail. They do tests and fail. We have to have every test work, and that has dramatically, in my view, slowed down our development of some of these important technologies. Mr. Sanker, you're nodding your head. Is that correct?
I mean, just like the Starship, Elon learns more from the Starship breaking up than he does from inherently waiting and slowing down to get the right perfect launch one time around. The value, the rate of learning, the first derivative of learning is our competitive weapon. It is how quickly we are adapting, not what are we capable of doing today. It's how much are we changing tomorrow. I could not agree more.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.